Hello, listeners, and happy first new MCU content of 2024. You're listening to Sisters Assembled, and today we are going to be breaking down the first 3 episodes of Echo. Quick disclaimer, Katie and I had immaculate self-control, and we stopped ourselves after that episode 3 cliffhanger in order to be able to react to just those first 3 episodes and bring you this episode. So, we might be doing a little predicting for how the show ends because we have not yet seen it, though I can tell you right now, as soon as we're done recording this evening, that's one of the first things I'll be doing is finishing the show. So, if this is your first time, welcome, and welcome back if you are a long-time listener. We have a great show for you today. I know Katie is excited to talk about all things Echo, so I'm going to let her take it away.
I am going to first start by saying to everybody that while Echo was not high on my list from the jump of things that I was looking forward to in 2024, pieces of content I was looking forward to in 2024, or just in general, I mean, it has shut me up so fast. And not because, and listen, I was never against it. It's not like I was like, ugh, God, I'm going to have to suffer through this. Not how I feel about Madam Web. But I do think that this show, if you are deciding not to watch it because you might have had the thought process of, kind of like I did, why? What's the purpose? Why do we need this specific show? Why are we focusing in on Maya? Oh my God, is it amazing? And I've only watched 3 out of 5 episodes and I love it. I am like on the edge of my chair watching this show. I mean, episode 3, full disclosure, I was walking on the treadmill watching episode 3 at the gym. And if anybody was watching me, like I could not even hold my facial expressions. I was gagged watching that episode. And I'm sure people were probably thinking, this girl's a little psycho. I don't know what's happening. But I really like this show. I'm nervous to say that because Marvel hasn't really hit a home run ending shows for me personally almost all of 2023. So I'm very nervous to say how much I love it now because I'm really scared I'm going to watch the last 2 episodes and I'm going to fall off the wagon. But for now, I do very much enjoy it.
Okay, so this was my number 1 most anticipated show of 2024, and it has not disappointed. I was probably 20 or 25 minutes into episode 1, and I watched Tuesday night. Katie didn't watch till Wednesday during the day. I watched not right at 9 p.m., but like right around 10:30, so I was pretty early, and I texted her. I was like, girl, this show, like, it is everything to me. The moment that it got me, like, I was enjoying it. I was a little confused by the opening scene, and we'll get to those and what those could possibly mean, I'm sure. But the moment it got me was when she was on her first mission working for Kingpin, and they're in that back room, and the other 2 guys are having a shootout with whatever gang they were against, and they're doing this thing throughout the show where they have silence and you're almost hearing it, or it's muffled, and you're almost hearing it from Maya's perspective, which is brilliant, by the way.
Yeah,
love
for
that
sure.
aspect so much. But in that particular scene, you're hearing not the full fight, you're hearing it through Maya's lens, and then the beat drops on the song and you get to full volume and Maya goes in and just absolutely rips everyone apart. And not only does she do that, but then Daredevil rolls on up and we get that fight scene. And that was the moment I literally screamed and I was like, I have not felt joy like this in so long.
Okay, so I have a couple things to say on that one. The first being their use of silence and then music in general has been impeccable. And I'm thinking, you called out the fight scene in the first episode. I'm thinking of the fight scene in the 3rd episode that, as I said, absolutely had me floored. And part of it was the use of no sound versus very loud music and a music that has a strong beat. And you guys all know I'm a sucker for when, punches land on beat. Like the fighting to the beat is like, I can't even explain what that does to me. So yes, I agree with that. That there's just something so amazing about how they're producing that I don't have words for that. The other thing being, because you brought up the Daredevil fight, I just got to clear something up really quick. For those who I saw this on the internet because that fight scene was put out prior to the show, which smart marketing, put the Daredevil fight scene in. If any of you follow me on TikTok, you know that my very first prediction after that first episode is we're not going to see that man again. And that's the only time we're going to see him in the show. So far, because again, I've only watched through 3, I'm still right. We have not yet seen him again. So we'll see. We'll see. But I have to just say, that is what genuine fighting looks like when you have two highly trained fighters. A lot of people were picking apart that fight and saying, oh, it doesn't look real. It doesn't look whatever. It looks like a dance because that is what two trained fighters are supposed to look like when they're fighting. It's essentially a dance with one another. That's what fighting is. And so I refuse to listen to y'all because that was a beautiful fight sequence. I mean, how often do we really truly have two, and again, I keep saying trained, but there's not really another word for it, fighters going at it? Think about it. I love me some Cap, but is he really a trained fighter? No, not at all. We've seen him fight in Brooklyn. Not at all. Like he got strong and was like, suddenly I can kick somebody and it hurts. Like that is what that is. These are two just immensely well-trained individuals, and it was such a beautiful fight scene. I would like to see him again, fight her specifically, because it's impeccable. I also just have to add, I'm loving that he has some great monologue, but Girly never even heard him. Like, I was cracking up at that because I was like, my guy, she has no idea that you're even talking to her right now. She's just like, this guy's punching me, so I'm punching him back. That's it.
Yeah, that scene was absolutely incredible. I mean, watching the two of them go at it, my eyes were just like falling out of my face. They were so happy. They were like, I don't even know where to look. They're both so good at this. It was incredible. And I think across the show, or I should say across the first 3 episodes, between the sound design and the sound production and the fighting that we've seen, I mean, it is top tier.
Yeah.
I mean, it's some of the best, both from a sound and fighting perspective, that we've ever seen. I know we hold up a lot the Black Panther franchise when it comes to the use of music. Obviously, Guardians of the Galaxy is in that conversation. This belongs in the conversation with the best franchises that use music and sound in the most effective ways. I mean, this was just mind-blowing, and I was just so happy. It just made me so happy in a way that, like, a Secret Invasion was just not doing for me. This blows that out of the water. It blows a lot of projects out of the water, and it's freaking awesome. If you're not watching the show, I don't know why you're listening to this, but if you haven't decided to watch the show yet, you're sleeping on something really awesome.
Yeah, and like I said, I was a critic of why the show was even being made. I didn't feel like it needed to be. And at this point, I'm not really sure I care. I don't know what 4 or 5 is going to bring, and maybe it doesn't do crap for almost anything other than the Daredevil storyline or maybe a future Spider-Man storyline. Fine. I don't care. I'm entertained. And is that not what the whole point of all of this is at the end of the day, is to be entertained? It's TV, it's movies, and that is what this is doing. I think too, it has the mature rating. So far, and we all know I'm not really into the whole gore scene. I don't do very well with all of that. So far, it has not been bad in the sense of like, I feel there's been like one scene. It was when she got grazed by the bullet and she's like literally sewing herself shut with dental floss. And I was like, listen, that's an it girl right there, but can't watch that. Personally, gotta look away.
I was like, Maya, no. Simply no. I was like, not the dental floss. Like, where's the sewing kit? Where's the sewing kit?
When I tell you I was seconds away from texting my one friend's mom, who's like in the field of medicine, and being like, can this work? Like, is this, because I'm thinking, well, like, can she get infections from that? Like, it's dental floss. I'm trying to understand.
Like, in a pinch, could I sew myself up with dental floss?
Yeah, I'm like, would this really work? Am I learning something new today? And so I was so close because I was like, I'm insanely curious about this. But yeah, I would actually say that's probably, to me, the only scene so far, and that's not even like why it has the mature rating, but I would say that's probably the only scene that I was like, ooh, I cannot watch that. The rest of them, the fight scenes, all that, yeah, you definitely could tell.
Oh, yeah.
You could tell because like let me tell you, are you walking around in Captain America the Winter Soldier seeing blood everywhere? No, ma'am, you are not. But here you were. You were watching some of it a little bit more gruesome. And I was like, I'm behind this. I like it. I love it.
Even that long shot of Vicky when he's dead, laying there,
And he's just like hanging off the side of the table.
and the blood is coming out of his mouth and
Mm-hmm.
running into his eyes.
Yep.
I was like, yep, I've definitely arrived at a mature adult show. Like, that would have never in a normal Marvel, like a regularly rated Marvel show. And I was like, I don't want to be excited that this is happening right now, but also just the fact that I'm getting this on my screen at this level and it's not egregious, it's not gratuitous. You're seeing it from almost the perspective of Bonnie then. And like it serves to show her the difference of the life that her cousin has been forced to lead versus the life that she leads. So it serves a purpose, but it also just reinforces like we're not in Kansas anymore.
No, we're in Oklahoma.
Yeah, and it's beautiful there it looks like. That's cool.
Well, I think it adds this extra layer, and I again, I just keep thinking of the episode 3 fight scene. And I mean, well, first off, I couldn't even count how many people she took out, and somehow there still seemed to be so many men in that room. And I was like, how many dudes did this guy bring with him to Oklahoma to get one girl? Cuz whoa. But just the amount of like, and again, it's not there to be grotesque. It's not there to turn people away from watching anything. It's there to add an extra layer, and that's exactly what it does. Watching her take those guys down would have been one thing, and that's great. It would have been awesome to watch, but actively watching her like bludgeon half of them, or like she had that whip thing that she was using. Well,
That was so cool.
yeah, and I mean, like, I know she pulled it off like a game or whatever, but she was essentially using it as a whip, and you could like you saw it slash across their faces. Like, it wasn't you weren't being pulled away from it because it was trying to pull you away from the nitty gritty of it. It wasn't. It was like, if this happened in real life, yeah, that guy would have just slashed his face open. And I'm like, yeah, thanks. That's real to me. That is a real fight that I'm watching with somebody who clearly can fight and handle her own, and she did. And it's amazing. It makes me very excited because, again, I've been saying I hope this is the direction that something like the Thunderbolts goes into.
For sure. And I think too, one of the things that actually got me super excited, even before it might have been after the first scene, because I think they flip it. Sometimes they do like an open and then they flip to the Marvel Spotlight logo and then they flip back, and sometimes it's just Marvel Spotlight and then they go into the show. But the fact that they showed that and we got to see, I've actually never seen it in motion. Like, they'd shown, I think, the logo before for the Spotlight banner, but the idea of it being like this own little opening thing.
Oh my God, wait. I am not going to even lie to you. I didn't put that together. That's what that was.
Okay, well, that's why I'm here.
I know. I was like, oh, we're not getting the normal MCU entrance. I was like, interesting. And I was like, what's Marvel Spotlight? I wasn't even thinking about the Spotlight banner at all.
See, I didn't even notice that we didn't get the normal entrance.
Oh.
I just was so focused on the fact that I loved the banner entrance and what that meant, because it felt, now that you're telling me, oh, we didn't have the Marvel logo and the normal like fanfare and all the stuff we're used to, now I understand why it felt like such a big change and so much gravitas to it.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, this is going to be great. Like, immediately, I was like, we are on a new plane of existence right now.
I just didn't put together what it was. Like, I was confused about why we weren't getting the regular MCU entrance. I didn't think about, duh, of course the Spotlight is the Spotlight banner. I just didn't. I guess because, too, I'm not sure. I mean, maybe I missed it, but I don't remember seeing the warning in the first episode. I do remember seeing it in episodes 2 and 3, but I don't remember seeing the, like, this may have some mature content for some people. I don't remember seeing it in the first episode, although I'm sure it did because that fight scene was a little gory. Although, I guess it was short. I don't know what the rules are around it, but yeah, I totally did not even put that together. That's what that was. But that makes so much sense.
Yeah, so now I want to dive into the actual story itself, because there's a really interesting narrative taking form here. You know, in episode 1, we definitely saw, it was actually really cool. We saw basically how we got to where we are, but from Echo's perspective, which was really cool.
I loved that. I loved that.
It was awesome and such a cool narrative way to tie into Hawkeye, and I almost wanna see them now from, like, comparisons, like, I wanna go back to Hawkeye and say, like, "Oh, this scene, like, I remember it, like, I remember the scene with her and him, but we were seeing it from his perspective. Now we've seen it from her perspective and how that changed her trajectory and everything," which we got a little bit of a hint at, obviously, during Hawkeye, but now to see it more deeply is really cool. So we saw her whole progression from her father's murder through into, how she became such a big part of, or how Fisk became such a big part of her life, how he trained her, how he manipulated her. And then basically what we saw in Hawkeye, which is her turning basically and changing her mind and then shooting Kingpin. So I loved that we kind of got the almost like a here's what you missed type thing, but from her perspective, which added to that narrative from Hawkeye.
Yeah, that was actually one of my favorite parts of the first episode because they spent almost the first half doing it. And I know we'll get to actually, there's two different parts that take place prior to this, but they did spend the first half, the majority of the first half, filling in the blanks, giving us more context. And I really enjoyed it because I was like, I was out here gallivanting with Kate and Clint, having a good old time, being like, I love Kate Bishop. And this all was happening on the other side, and we don't get to see it, but now it's really like taking those glasses off. And now we're looking at a different perspective. It's honestly, for anybody who likes to read, it's like those good old dual POVs.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, like we love a good dual POV. And it doesn't have to be two. I mean, I'm thinking like Percy Jackson, because also that show is obviously so relevant right now. But the books themselves, when you reach Heroes of Olympus, that's what I'm thinking of. You've gotten three different narrators. Sometimes they're throwing four or five in the book, depending on what works, to show different parts of the story, to show different perspectives. You get to see cool perspectives of other characters that you like never got to see, like Percy. I mean, they were all in love with Percy. Let's be real. They were like, this guy is like freaking awesome. He's like a god. But from Percy's point of view, he's just like, hey, like he's such a little loser.
He's like,
But
I'm
like, I
just
love him.
surviving.
I know. From his point of view, like everything's a mess and he never gives himself enough credit. From everybody else is like, Leo, I'm pretty sure would marry Percy if given the chance. Like he thinks that guy is the best. But that's what this felt like. Like you sit there and you finally got the other side, the other idea of what's going on from this side of the story. And I enjoyed it like no other. I actually wish, and I know for reasons otherwise, but I do wish we got more of it, where we got to see multiple characters' point of views of the situation, because it does bring a different depth to all of it.
Yeah, and I think it really creates this interesting interwoven narrative. Like, obviously, we know the MCU is interwoven, right? But oftentimes, when you're looking at a show that is a sequel essentially to another show, they'll just rehash scenes from that other show and say, in case you missed it, here's what you need to know. But instead, they took the time to actually, I don't know if they filmed it, during Hawkeye or what, but they took the time to get the different angles, to get the different perspectives so that they were able to tell it specifically from Maya's perspective, not Maya's story from Clint's perspective. And that's like a really interesting choice to make sure that you are telling her story specifically the way that she understands it. Because at certain points in Hawkeye, she is the villain. She's the bad guy. You're rooting against her. So you can't tell her story from the perspective of her being the villain. You have to tell it from her being the hero, because everybody's the hero of their own story, right? And so I love that they took the time to help you reframe as an audience your perspective on Maya and understand and empathize with her, because I think that can get lost if you're, for lack of better term, a little bit lazy and just recutting together old scenes to get everybody caught up to speed.
Right. And I kind of want to run with this for now, her relationship with Kingpin, because I think that's a big part. And then I want to work backwards from the beginning, because there's two more parts that I think make up this whole story as a whole. But the Kingpin relationship is probably the biggest at this point. And as we've said, we've seen through episode 3. So that means we did and we are both currently holding on to the cliffhanger of he showed on up in Oklahoma at the place she's staying, right near her family and everything else. And there's no interaction. I mean, we all know, we've seen he doesn't sign, he does not know ASL. He has somebody who is sitting there interpreting for both of them. Didn't look like there was anybody else there with him, though I guess episode 4 we'll find out. But they kind of just both look at each other because, well, to be fair, there's no means of communication between them. But also, I think it's just that moment of, you shot me, tried to fatally shoot me. And she's like, oh, God, I thought I killed you. And then on top of that, there's the added layer of he just saved her life, but she also is trying to actively take him down. On top of, I mean, that she calls him uncle. She was raised with him as essentially a family member. She viewed him as such, and he viewed her as and a lot of people can say Kingpin is ruthless, and I'm not going to disagree, but she was never just a weapon to him, and you can tell by the way he reacts to her and the fact that he hasn't put a bullet through her already. I mean, this is such a complicated relationship and I love it. I think it's so interesting and I'm so excited to see more of it.
Yeah, and I think what's really cool now, basically having that confirmation that this is the Kingpin, that from the Daredevil series that we are now seeing here, having that context then of things like his love for Vanessa. He is not probably the guy that you would think of as someone who loves deeply, but he does. In his own, he may go about protecting the people he loves or loving them in a very particular way, but that part is true and honest. He does love people very deeply. We saw it with Vanessa, and now I think we also see it with Maya. He adores her, and you can tell. And I think for him, the betrayal is worse than the actual physical injury. Clearly, he's, made a pretty decent recovery, but the fact that someone he loves so deeply was able to hurt him like that and want to hurt him and then continue to hurt his legacy because she thinks he's dead. So she thinks all she's doing is dismantling his kingdom. But to then try to dismantle his legacy on top of it, it's just like putting salt in a literal open wound. And I think that's really interesting. You're right. It does make it a very complicated relationship to hate the person or one of the people you love so much and know that they took away your only living parent. I mean, there's just so many layers to it all.
Yeah, it's a one of, I would argue, the better relationships we get to see in the sense of a lot of characters have messed up relationships with family or with other characters or whatever, but this one is just such a complex idea. Just looking at it, there's just so many things that it shouldn't work. He shouldn't have a soft spot for her the way he does, and he should be able to, even after all the betrayal that he feels, end her and stop her. We clearly know he doesn't, at least up until this point, because there's still scenes with them together from the trailers. And we know that she wants to end him and end everything he stands for because she feels that same betrayal. And so it's like they're both battling the same emotions. They both hurt each other. And I'm so intrigued because we know at the end of the day, Kingpin is not going to die. They are not going to do that when they are having a Daredevil show come around the corner. And on top of that, they pulled that one already and he lived. They pulled the, oh, will he? Will we all knew he will. He was going to live at the end of Hawkeye. And they're not going to take Echo away. They're not going to do away with Maya after, well, to be honest, giving her own show like this and then never, like, are you going to just end her character here? That's a waste of everyone's time. That's pointless. So, there has to be something that happens here. Some way they meet in the middle. And we did go into this saying, will Maya really be a hero? Or is she going to walk that line? Will she continue to be in that gray area? And I do wonder if her and Kingpin reach some sort of agreement where she stays in that gray area. Because think, he's going to be there for Daredevil. He's going to be there, I'm hoping, for a Spider-Man movie. What part does she play? She can't dismantle him. That's not going to work. So I'm thinking long term here, where does their relationship end up? Because they have to have a truce somewhere. Nobody's going to die, at least between the two of them.
Yeah, you're right. It is interesting because it brings up something for me all the way back from the beginning of the episode. I will remark on your most recent point, I promise. But you pointed out that, you don't think that Daredevil's coming back because the only scene we saw of him in the trailers has played out already.
It's a theory. It's not a want, just to clarify.
No, I agree. I get what you're saying. But I think what your statement made me wonder and kind of brought to the forefront is, do we go back to New York? Because so much of what the people who are in her hometown keep saying to her is, "Oh, you're Maya from New York. Oh, you're from New York." Like that is just so reinforced that she is not from there anymore. Like she may have been born there, but she is now bringing back her New York problems. She has a New York attitude, and that is just continually reinforced. And Kingpin, look, he's not going to play around in Oklahoma for very long. His empire, his throne sits in New York. So I'm saying all this to say, I wonder if we end up going back to the city, that's where we get more Daredevil because obviously he's not going to make it out to Oklahoma. That doesn't make sense. That's where we get more Daredevil. We have some kind of showdown. Maybe there's an agreement that he will stay out of her hometown. He will kind of remove his black market shipping, whatever he's doing there from her hometown. They'll clean that up in Oklahoma, and she will then like leave him alone in New York. He's allowed to do whatever he wants there as long as he leaves her people alone. I could see that kind of being the truce because then at least he's leaving what's left of her family alone because realistically it was working for him that got her father killed.
Right. And that's the so you brought up a couple good points. The first being is the only way I see Daredevil returning is if we return to New York. Yes. I still have a horrible hunch in the nicest of ways he was kind of used as clickbait. And also to establish he was working in New York during Hawkeye. Those are really the only reasons I see him being in the show at this point. So I don't know. I'm still going to hold my hunch too. I don't know if we're going to see him again, but I also don't know if we'll be back in New York. I think we might have scenes of Kingpin in New York, but I'm not entirely sure Maya's returning to New York. On the flip side of that, you kind of are bringing up her family, and I want to get into that because that's one of those scenes early in the first episode, and that's the next part, right? We always talk about the A, B, and C plot, and I feel like her family, and I guess plots aren't necessarily the best idea, but it's the best way to categorize them right now. The whole idea of her family and her heritage, everything to that. Oh, hold on. I'll say heritage is almost a whole other thing. That's that very beginning of the episode. So I should just say her family is one of the B or C plots. And we start the episode with her mom being killed. And I say being killed because somebody cut the brakes. And I don't know if it was intended for her necessarily, but it happened. And that's how we learn, that's how Maya loses her leg. And that's how she ends up in New York. Okay, established. It was a great backstory, but it also showed us her grandparents. It showed us her relationship with Bonnie. And again, if you've been listening to my reactions to each episode, oh, I have a horrible feeling for Bonnie.
Every time Bonnie's on the screen, I want her to go away because I think she's gonna not make it out.
So do I. That's exactly like my gut feeling. I'm like, oh, Bonnie. And if you're a Vampire Diaries fan, we all know Bonnie like dies and comes back like 70 million times. I just have that feeling. I'm like, oh my God. It's just like, it's going to happen.
But equally as bad would be if Biscuits died because he is
I'm in love with Biscuits.
amazing. I love him.
I don't know why his
so
name's
much.
Biscuits. I don't know the lore, but I love him. Like when he was driving up with the totaled car and his grandma saw him and the face he was making, I was like, me when I'm caught, just like red-handed. But I feel it with Bonnie because they're supposed to have this connection.
Yeah.
And they did. And they established that when they're children. They are very close. Even Maya says, you're a sister. You're my sister. Like that's just the truth to her. And obviously they lose that in everything that Maya goes through that nobody I really think will ever really understand. You don't understand what that's like to, and I'm not just saying to lose a parent, but to lose the parent, move away from everything you know. Your dad's into some shady crap, and this new guy you're calling uncle that you adore, which we see she does, not just as an adult, but through her young years already, is essentially running the shadiest empire ever. And you're just put into all this crap. You grow up in all of this. Like, no one's going to get that. And so it's interesting because that relationship's supposed to be there. And you could tell, I mean, episode 3 was a big one. You could tell Bonnie is upset. You could tell that Maya's trying to keep her at arm's length. She knows. She knows what it's like when people are too close to the things she's involved in. I have such a horrible gut feeling for my girl Bonnie. I really do.
I know. I just wish she would like stay away from Maya so that she survives. Because someone from her family is going to die.
There's been too many hints about it.
Yeah, and that's where these stories, I mean, not to be that person, that's where these stories tend to go, but like that's what raises the stakes, right? Obviously the stakes are incredibly high already. She almost just died. Her like biological uncle almost just died. Bonnie almost just died already. But to raise the stakes then even further, you have to have a permanent death. Something irreversible has to happen. It has to be Maya's fault because she brought this on, this town. And that's, going to be part of her experience. Is going to be what shapes her more moving forward. Every hero has that moment, whether she becomes a hero who operates in the gray or becomes a full on hero, we obviously have yet to see, but it's like her Uncle Ben moment, basically. Like every hero has to have one. And I think, unfortunately, any member of her family could do it. If it's her grandpa, I'm actually going to hide under my couch.
Stop it. I love him. I would be so hurt.
I will actually, like, run away.
He's an icon.
He's so adorable. I love him so much. So her grandma's got a stiff upper lip. She's a bit of a tough lady, but she's got a great family. And I would be sad to see any one of them, but I definitely think that one of them is not going to make it out of this show.
I agree. I think that's what they're leading up to. And I think they're also really trying to drive home family. And for Maya, she didn't really have that. You see the connection all the rest of her family members have. I mean, even the grandparents have gotten divorced, and there's still clear relationships with and some of the uncles and cousins. I'm not quite sure the relations. Like, I'm not sure whose is whose kid and like whatever. But I mean, regardless, you see they all have clear relationships with each other. They are all still in that town living near each other. And then there's Maya, who, as you said earlier, is out from New York. Maya from New York. She's not from there anymore. Her origins aren't the same anymore because she moved away. She left, she became a city girl, and now she's completely different. And granted, she is, just for a lot of other reasons. And so they're really driving home this family because they are still, as soon as Maya's in town, Maya's in town. Maya's here. Maya's here. Like everybody's celebrating her and wants to see her, except her grandma. And, I just think when you're driving that point home and you're driving these stakes that are, Maya's wrapped into things she shouldn't be wrapped into because she was raised into them. And now you're sitting there and you've got all this family around and her uncle was involved in a lot of it and everything else. Well, that's when you start to see those moments where you're like, someone's not walking out of here alive. It's just the fact.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm curious about who it is, but at the same time, I'm like, if I just live in this 3-episode bubble, everybody survives.
Yeah, honestly, that's kind of how I feel about just like how the show's going. I'm like, it's so good now. Maybe I just don't ever find out what happens.
It's kind of like it's kind of like stopping the Hunger Games after catching fire and then PETA never gets hijacked and you're like, everything is fine.
But honestly, I would, because I literally stopped the second Mockingjay because I'm like, Finnick doesn't die. What are y'all talking about? Like, no. So I just end it. I'm like, it's okay. We're good.
If I stop here, it isn't real. It's like no body, no death. I didn't see it. It didn't happen.
Yeah, it literally didn't happen. So I'm good. That's how I feel. I'm like, if I would have stopped Secret Invasion before 6, I would be sitting here going, Secret Invasion was really good.
It's true.
Did I? No. Obviously, for purposes of, I have this podcast that I need to talk on and have knowledge of. So I couldn't just stop the show. But, that is how I feel. I'm like, well, what if 4 and 5 tank? And now you're going to hear a very different message in the next episode. I don't know.
Okay, well, before I let you put that out in the universe too much.
I know, I'm sorry.
I just can't let you put that kind of karma out there.
I'm just so nervous, dude. I mean, after all 3 shows of 2023 tanked their finales, I can't. At least in my opinion, tank their finales. I can't.
Okay, again, switching gears and avoiding all of the bad vibes, I do want to talk about probably our last topic for this first 3 episode review, which is the thread of female ancestors that happens at the beginning of every episode.
Yes.
I don't know how I feel about it because I don't yet understand what it means. I think I need to see the full show and all 5 episodes, and I don't need them to, like, hit me over the head with it because I like to consider myself a relatively empathetic and, like, emotionally intelligent person, and I also read a lot, so, like, I can pick up metaphors and stuff. I just need them to complete the metaphor so that I understand what the meaning is, and then I'll be okay. Right now, I'm not sure how I feel about it because I'm not sure what it's trying to tell me.
Okay, so the first thing I want to say is way back when. I know I did it in a newsletter and I think we discussed it in another episode. This was a rumor going into Echo that she was kind of going to get some sort of a mystical ability. And a lot of people, and again, I know we talked about it in one episode, and I can't remember. A lot of people were like, really? Because we have a really cool ground level fighter. Why would you take that away from her? At the time, it was a rumor. Clearly, that's the direction they're going with this show. My understanding is, well, first off, her grandpa explains it, is she is directly descended from that woman who, like, at the beginning, they kind of all look like it looks like bark. Like, I thought, and I'm thinking that because I'm thinking, like, again, Percy Jackson's on my mind. I'm thinking about how they just showed one of the nature spirits.
Spoiler, I haven't seen the episode yet.
Dude, that was in like episode 1.
Oh.
Yeah. So
Well, I'm all caught up except for today's, so maybe I just missed it.
I've watched today's. Today's was good. But no, I'm thinking about like in the first episode. But regardless, I that woman who they explain is the one who saves her people, and that's how they're born to be and come to, I don't know if they come to Earth or they're born out and here they are now on Earth and now they're human. That's kind of the whole beginning that we see. Because when I first put it on, I was like, I don't know if this is the right show.
I was like, did I hit the wrong button?
I know. I was like, this is some like space stuff happening over here.
Yeah, I was like, did I accidentally put on Guardians?
Yeah, it was well, right. I was thinking of, and I can't remember who they are, but like all the gold people.
Yeah, the people who created Adam.
Yeah,
I can't think of their name right now.
I can't think of their name either, but that's who
The
I was
Sovereign.
thinking of. Yeah, and I was like, I am confused. But yeah, anyway. So she's directly descended from the woman who saves the entire group, the entire tribe, and is the first of the Choctaw. So we see her. She is the one who gets that. She's the only one who touches that special water at the beginning before they have like an earthquake or something. And she gets those swirling figures on her hands, and that's what allows her to save her people. Okay. Then I'm assuming we see the next descendant. That's episode 2. That's the one where they're playing a game to get who decides the land.
Or not necessarily the next, because it looked like a lot of time had passed, but a descendant. Because if you think about between 2 and 3, like there's a decent amount of time. Because you went from like, because they give you years. It's
True.
like 1200 AD, and then you do 1800.
To be fair, I think I ignored the years. I'm not gonna lie. I just I don't think I paid attention.
Well, I'm like the timeline person on this show, so I have to pay attention to these things.
Okay. So not the next, but one of the next of that lineage. And we see that she also has a moment where those symbols show up on her hand and it allows her to do well in the game, to defend the land, keep the land for her people. Then episode 3, we see another descendant. Then she gets the symbol. She's the one who saves her people. Oh, Taylor's having a moment. What?
When you said defend the land, it sparked something in me. What has each one of them done in their scenes?
Defended people.
They've defended their people and defended their land. And then think about how that applies to Maya, what she was doing in that moment. She was dismantling an empire that has taken advantage of her people.
Well, right. That's where I was going.
Okay, well, I just put that together.
Oh. Okay, well, Taylor said that beautifully. I was just giving the summary of where we were at as far as the lineage. But essentially, the idea is that Maya is a part of this lineage, and her grandmother was too. And you know that because we see that at the beginning of the first episode as well. Her grandmother her grandfather says speak to essentially her ancestors, and that bird was a symbol to her, and she kind of had that moment of knowing something wasn't going to be right. She had like a foresight almost. And you see that this has been passed down clearly through generations. I think it's interesting how they're telling the story. I'm not really sure where we're gonna go with it fully. We have only seen Maya. I mean, we've technically only seen her use the ability once, which was when she was getting her leg out from being stuck between the train cars. She has had the flashbacks multiple times. Again, I don't know how far we're going to take this ability. I'd love if we kind of kept it pretty on the DL with her because I do think she's pretty cool without it. But I think the explanation behind it is very interesting on its own.
Yeah, I love that it's a maternal line and not, something that passes, that there's no men involved, basically, which is
Period.
cool because Maya is a baddie and she is one of the coolest ladies in the MCU right now. I'm, just going to put that out there. She kicks butt, she takes names, and she really doesn't need that much help to do it. And so I think it's really cool that this show is highlighting her matriarchal power and the line through the female, or the female line, I should say, and the powerful females that she is descended of. I think that's really awesome. I also, though, agree. I don't want Maya's training, her abilities, her physical, like on the ground abilities, to be overshadowed by anything mystical because we do have a Scarlet Witch, we have a Sorcerer Supreme, and we have seen those types of abilities before. Anything mystical, really. I don't know that I need Maya to have it. I think she's a really cool character on her own. And yes, this is obviously a part of her, but I think also it's entirely possible that she is only, like I said before, able to tap into this power when she's defending her land and her people. So it's possible she's only able to really tap into it in Oklahoma. Like if she were to ever
I
go
was just
back,
about to say.
yeah, like if she were to ever go back to New York and take on a kingpin or whatever, or resume her life there, I don't think she would have this power because she is drawing the power from her ancestors on her ancestral land. So I think it's one of those interesting powers that I'm like, okay, cool, I get it. It has a lot of meaning and that's really cool. But I'm also kind of glad that it has, at least in my theory, it has a limitation where you're not just going to be able to use it all the time and use it as a crutch. Because, lady, you don't need a crutch. Like, you are just absolutely destroying everyone all on your own. You're good enough on your own, my girl.
I really like that you said that because I was kind of picking my brain and I kind of as soon as you were starting to say it was when it came to me as well that I was like the best way for them to handle this without them going full mystical, bringing her into a realm that I don't think she needs to be in. Because again, I'm sorry, but can we just focus on some ground levels for a little bit? I love me some cosmic, I love me some mystical. And you know what? That's awesome. But at the end of the day, when you have these amazing ground level characters that you actually are going about telling stories of, you don't need to up them into something. Doesn't need to be a level up. They are great how they are, and especially Maya is insanely amazing how she is. I mean, again, a gentle reminder, she essentially is like Taskmaster. She can replicate people who are fighting her. She replicates their fighting styles. So, on top of just being absolutely amazing as a fighter herself, she has that ability already. I just think if we allow for this limitation, which I do very much like, it allows the story to be told. It allows her to really draw from her roots. But again, to your point, it stays at her roots. It's not something that follows her beyond them. So when she returns to New York, which I see her story doing in the nicest of ways, I'm not sure what we would continue to do with Maya in Oklahoma, then the power's gone. And that works for me. That tells the story the way it needs to tell. And again, I'm also thinking we just had Cohorty, right? We just had Cohorty come in and she's arguably one of the most powerful beings right now in the multiverse. I'm not sure we need another mystical story in that direction when we have somebody who essentially embodies the Tesseract. Just my thought process. So I like that. I like that idea and I hope that's what they run with.
Yeah. So I think on that note, we're going to call it an episode on our episode 1 to 3 reactions for Echo. Net, we've spent the last little bit of time talking to you all about how amazing Maya is, and this show is fantastic. And I personally, I'm really, really excited to finish it. So definitely stick around with us while we finish the show and come back to you with our full reactions for all of Echo. You can make sure that you are following along with us on your podcast platform of choice by giving us a subscribe or a follow. Definitely make sure you're also checking out our website for calendars and things like that. And that's also the hub where you can go ahead and support the show if you would like to help us make the show better.
You can also give us a follow on Twitter at Sisassembledpod, Pod, Instagram and Threads at Sisters Assembled, and subscribe to us on YouTube at Sisters Assembled as well. And next episode, we've already been kind of talking about it, but next episode will be us covering the final 2 episodes of Echo. That is 4 and 5. So stick around because we're really excited. We like this show so far. I really hope that tone does not change by the next episode, but we really are enjoying it. So make sure you guys get ready for that one, and we can all be continuing to enjoy Echo for the next little bit because we hope you guys are enjoying it just as much as we are. So continue to keep up with Marvel content and watching Echo if you haven't already, and keeping up with us as Marvel just blew your mind. So let's talk about it.